Thomas. He's been on the court for nearly a quarter of a century now, probably the most unqualified judge in our lifetime to serve, probably not really qualified to be the men's room attendant, and replaced a really excellent judge. But of course, George H.W. Bush was forced to get a black judge, which is reasonable because blacks are like 13% of our population. But try finding a progressive black judge. He had to take what he could get, and actually embarrassed himself by saying with a straight face, I don't know how he did it, he is the most qualified man for the job. Anyway, now our current president shares with Thomas an absolutist opposition to gun control, a deep skepticism of the elite academic establishment, a nostalgia for the perceived America of yesteryear, but most bone-chilling is a belief that the government may favor and promote Christianity over other faiths. Now, we all know this is one of the cornerstones of our Constitution, right in the First Amendment, that government and religion will remain separate entities. And here he's saying that, no, the government can favor it. They want less government, a more authoritarian executive, meaning the president, fewer racial entitlements, more guns, and more God. All of his clerks are very right-leaning people that he brings in, whereas even somebody like Scalia, specifically Scalia, brought in some of his clerks that had more liberal and progressive leanings so that he could get a more balanced opinion about issues that he was going to weigh in on. But Thomas has never done that. Now, one of his former clerks is a woman named Allison Ide, awaiting appointment to the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. She currently serves on the Colorado Supreme Court, where she established her conservative bona fides by dissenting from a ruling that prohibited the state from spending public funds to private religious schools. Her dissent 2 years ago maps neatly onto Thomas's own concurrence in this year's case called Trinity Lutheran versus Comer. The court ruled that Missouri could not deny a grant to a Christian school solely on account of its, quote, religious character, unquote. Thomas asserted that the government may never discriminate against religion by refusing to subsidize houses of worship and sectarian programs. Thomas, like Ide, appears to believe that when a state declines to fund religious activity, even out of respect for the Establishment Clause, it engages in unconstitutional discrimination. When Ide is confirmed, Thomas will gain a critical ally in his fight for ever more entanglement between church and state, and she will be the first of many Trump picks who are as immutable in their views as their former bosses. This is a movement and a cause, not just a constitutional theory. And of course, you may ask, why would a state establish a state religion? Well, in my opinion, it's for only one purpose, which is to impose the beliefs of that religion upon the entire populace without any recourse. So, for example, if Christianity became the established religion of our state, Florida, how would issues like slavery or bigotry against minorities, such as homosexuals or racial minorities, be treated? If the Supreme Court ruled that state religions are legal, they would then be surrendering the power to enforce federal constitutional protections for those persons discriminated against by the religious laws. And since we see rampant contradictions through the Christian religion, Thomas would want to be the interpreter of the Bible as law, and of course, such laws would be unamendable.
There's never been a theocracy that wasn't a total and complete disaster for its citizens. Never. I don't know what it is about Clarence Thomas that makes him think that this time maybe it'll be different. I think that's the definition of insanity.
Well, I think it's important also to remember that the reason why we have the Establishment Clause is because any review of history by the modern liberal, industrial, secular countries of the world, of which we are but one, have come to the conclusion that religious liberty, religious freedom, is the possession of the individual person and not religion. And that's a lesson that we continue to try to have to learn in this country. We are continually in conflict with churches who advance the notion that religious freedom belongs to them. It doesn't. It belongs to each individual human being.
That's a really great point, and you don't hear that very often, Jim.
No, not you don't. Not often enough.